far beyond the shining core of the galaxy, where stars grew sparse and darkness ruled. The outer rim was a place of mystery and fear. Here, among the cold void and ancient ruins of long-lost civilizations, whispers told of a forgotten race. Humans. To the many powerful alien species that controlled the central worlds, humans were no more than myths. Stories passed down through generations like bedtime tales or warnings to curious explorers. They spoke of a savage, unpredictable species that once roamed the stars but vanished without a trace, their name fading into legend. No one had seen a human ship for centuries, and the technology they once wielded was said to be lost forever. Buried beneath the dust of forgotten planets, the Council of Zune, a coalition of the galaxy's most advanced and influential civilizations, kept a careful watch over the borders where these stories were born. For them, the idea of humans was something to dismiss, a distraction from real threats and political struggles. But that belief began to crumble the moment an unusual signal pierced through the silent dark near the disputed Perseus sector, a region known for its dangerous nebulae and lawless outlaws. The signal was faint, yet precise, unlike anything recorded before. It was not the random pulse of space debris or the crackle of a dying star, but a pattern deliberate, controlled, and undeniably artificial. Commander Vrak, a seasoned leader of the Zune fleet, received the order to investigate. He was a man of logic and discipline, trained to dismiss rumors and focus only on facts. Still, even he could not ignore the strange feeling stirring in his chest as he prepared his ship and crew. The fleet moved cautiously into the depths of Perseus, scanning for any sign of life or danger. When they approached the coordinates, the empty silence of space stretched before them like a heavy curtain. No ships, no signals, just endless blackness, broken by distant stars. Vrak's mind raced. Was this a trap? An elaborate hoax? Or perhaps something worse? Then, the sensors picked up a faint energy signature, barely a whisper against the cosmic noise, coming from a cluster of asteroids. The fleet edged closer, lights piercing the dark like cautious fireflies. Suddenly, the unexpected happened. An ancient-looking ship, massive and unlike anything in the Zune archives, slowly emerged from behind the rocks. Its hull was scarred and battered, but it pulsed with a hidden strength, as if it carried centuries of untold stories within its worn frame. The ship's design was unfamiliar, angular and purposeful, with lines that spoke of speed and survival rather than elegance or diplomacy. Vrak's breath caught. Could this be what they had only dared to imagine? As the mysterious ship drifted into full view, the tension in the command room thickened. Communication channels opened, but no response came. The silence was unsettling, like a calm before a storm. Then, without warning, the ship's power surged, and smaller vessels launched swiftly from its bays. They moved with precision and speed that no known species could match, surrounding the Zune fleet in a tight formation. The unexpected display shattered every assumption the Council had made about the myths of humanity, Commander Vrak realized. In that moment, that what they had called legend was very real and far more dangerous than anyone had prepared for. The void of space suddenly seemed smaller, charged with an energy that hinted at coming chaos, conflict that could change the galaxy forever. Commander Vrak's fleet moved cautiously closer to the mysterious coordinates near the nebula, their sensors alert for any signs of activity. The silence of space pressed around them like a heavy shroud, broken only by the faint hum of their own ship's engines and the distant flicker of stars. Suddenly, from the thick shadows of the swirling nebula, shapes began to emerge sleek. Fast-moving ships unlike any vessel recorded in the Zune archives. These ships had smooth, sharp designs, reflecting the faint light of distant suns, like hunting creatures in the dark. No markings or symbols decorated their hulls, no flags or colors to indicate allegiance, but their movements were sharp and coordinated, almost as if they thought and acted as one mind. The Zune fleet immediately tried to open a communication channel, sending calm, universal greetings in the hope of peaceful contact. The strange ships, however, did not respond with words or signals. Instead, they shifted formation with incredible speed and precision, slipping through the fleets, perimeter like shadows weaving through moonlight. Vrak felt the cold knot of unease tighten in his chest as the humans' actions grew more aggressive. Before anyone could fully understand what was happening, the unexpected burst of violence shattered the fragile calm. Without any warning or declaration, a storm of energy blasts erupted from the human vessels, striking the lead Zune cruiser with deadly accuracy. The cruiser's shields flared and then collapsed under the sudden assault, systems sparking and alarms blaring throughout the ship. It drifted helplessly, disabled and vulnerable in the cold void. The rest of the fleet scrambled to respond, their weapons locking onto the agile attackers. But the humans seemed to anticipate every move, dodging and weaving through the chaotic dance of battle. Vrak's voice echoed through the command bridge, ordering defensive maneuvers and counterattacks. But every tactic the Zune employed was met with a swift, calculated response that pushed them back. The legends the galaxy had dismissed as mere stories, the savage humans who vanished from history, were not only real, they were armed, skilled, and far more dangerous than anyone had believed. Each strike from the human ships carried the weight of survival, the determination of a species that refused to be forgotten or conquered. Vrak studied the enemy carefully, noticing the way their vessels moved in perfect harmony, covering each other's weaknesses while exploiting any opening with ruthless efficiency. This was no simple raid. It was a message, clear and brutal, delivered by those who had waited patiently in the shadows. The fleet's sensors picked up bursts of electronic interference, jamming the gen's communication and sensor arrays, leaving many ships blind and disoriented. In the face of such unexpected ferocity, fear began to spread among the ranks. Crew members whispered of the myths with new urgency. Were these truly the humans, returned from the edge of extinction to reclaim their place? Vrak forced himself to remain calm, his mind racing through possibilities and strategies. Retreat was considered, but pride and duty held the fleet firm. The fight was no longer just about survival. It was about confronting a new reality where old assumptions no longer applied. As the battle raged around him, Vrak realized that this encounter was just the beginning of a challenge that would test every skill and belief the Council of Zune held. Somewhere deep in the dark, the humans waited with unyielding resolve, their ships flashing like stars reborn, ready to rewrite the future of the galaxy. Captain Alina Reyes stood firmly on the bridge of her flagship, the valiant dawn, as the remnants of the skirmish with the Zune fleet flickered on the ships. Holographic displays. Her eyes were sharp, filled with quiet fire and unwavering resolve. The human ships had struck hard and fast, but now was the time to reveal the truth behind their sudden and fierce return to the galactic stage. Through carefully broadcasted transmissions, she addressed not only the battered Zune fleet, but every listening species across the nearby systems. Her voice was calm but firm, carrying the weight of a people who had survived against impossible odds. "We are humans," she declared, her words cutting through the silence of space. "A race once thought lost to myth and time. We have rebuilt not in grand capitals or crowded worlds, but in the hidden corners of the galaxy where others dared not look. Our survival has not been handed to us. It has been earned through grit, innovation, and an unbreakable spirit." She explained that after centuries of near extinction, humans had quietly spread into isolated star systems, learning to adapt and thrive in environments where no one else believed life could flourish. These worlds were harsh and unforgiving, but from their harshness came strength and unity. Technology had been reclaimed, rebuilt from scavenged remnants, and enhanced by human creativity. Unlike other civilizations that relied on slow bureaucracy or rigid hierarchies, humanity had embraced flexibility and daring tactics, often surprising their opponents with unexpected maneuvers and rapid decision-making. Reyes emphasized that their mission was clear: to reclaim lost human space and protect their expanding frontier from exploitation and control by powers like the Council of Zune. They were not here to negotiate from weakness, but to stand firm and defend what was theirs, by right and by history. Her words sparked shock and disbelief among many listening species who had long written humans off as a fated myth. unable to survive the harsh realities of space. But for the first time, those stories were shattered by the unmistakable presence of a fleet that combined raw firepower with intelligence and tactical mastery. The Zune strategists scrambled to understand the human approach. Reyes's forces employed tactics unlike any recorded in the galaxy's military history. Small, fast-strike teams coordinated across vast distances, unpredictable attack patterns, and an uncanny ability to learn and adapt mid-battle. Their ships moved like a living organism, each unit aware of the whole, ready to fill gaps or exploit weaknesses instantly. Human technology, while not always the most advanced in raw terms, was crafted with an emphasis on versatility and resilience. Shields could regenerate quickly, weapons were modular and could shift between offense and defense, and communication networks operated with encryption that baffled the Zune attempts to intercept or jam. Behind these technological strengths was the human spirit and unyielding determination that no fleet could match. Reyes knew that this war cry was only the beginning, a signal to the galaxy that humanity had returned to claim its place among the stars, no longer a legend, but a force to be reckoned with. As she watched the fleet prepare for the next phase of their campaign, she felt the weight of history on her shoulders, but also the fierce hope of a new dawn. Every star they passed was a reminder of past losses and future possibilities. Council of Zune, powerful as it was, had underestimated the humans' capacity to rise from myth to reality, and that mistake would cost them dearly. With every passing moment, humanity's message grew clearer and louder. They would no longer be erased or forgotten. The war cry that echoed through the void was not just a declaration of battle, it was a promise that the humans had returned. To stay, to protect, and to shape the galaxy's future with a strength born of survival, unity, and hope. While the Council of Zune maintained its firm stance that humans were nothing more than a dangerous myth best ignored or crushed, not all in the galaxy agreed. Deep in the darker corners of space, where lawlessness thrived and governments held little sway, a secretive and unpredictable group known as the Shadow Collective watched the unfolding events with keen interest. This collective was made up of smugglers, mercenaries, and outcasts, those who had been cast aside by the galaxy's ruling powers or chose to live outside their rules. For years, the Shadow Collective had operated in the shadows, trading in secrets, technology, and influence, always watching for changes in the galactic balance of power. To them, the sudden appearance of humanity was not a threat, but an opportunity, chance to shake the rigid order imposed by the Council and to create something new from the chaos. When Captain Alina Reyes made contact with the Shadow Collective, through encrypted channels, an uneasy but necessary alliance began to form. Reyes knew that to challenge the might of the Council, humanity needed more than firepower. They needed allies who understood the shadows of politics and the hidden currents of power. The smugglers brought information networks that reached places official spies could not. The mercenaries offered unmatched combat skills that complemented human tactics. And the outcasts provided access to forgotten technologies and forbidden knowledge. Together, they began to plot a strategy not just for battle, but for revealing the Council's corruption and hypocrisy to the wider galaxy. The Council had long presented itself as the protector of peace and order. But beneath the surface, greed, fear, and self-interest ruled. The Shadow Collective and humanity sought to expose these truths, believing that only by shining light on the Council's weaknesses could a new, fairer order emerge, one where humans would not be dismissed or hunted, but accepted as equals. Meanwhile, far from the turmoil of secret alliances and shadowy plans, Commander Vrak found himself at a crossroads. Once a loyal servant of the Council, trained to believe in its wisdom and authority, Vrak was beginning to question everything he had been taught. The fierce, determined humans had shattered his assumptions, forcing him to see their species not as primitive or savage, but as survivors with strengths born from adversity. He watched as the Council doubled down on its hostility, refusing to adapt or acknowledge new realities, and he worried about the cost of such stubborn pride. Brock's internal struggle grew heavier with every decision he faced, whether to continue blindly following orders or to seek a path that might bridge the growing divide between humans and the rest of the galaxy. He understood that history was being rewritten in this moment, and the choices he made could shape the future for all species. The galaxy itself seemed to hold its breath as this fragile web of alliances, doubts, and hidden agendas tightened. The Shadow Collective, moving swiftly through the fringes of known space, prepared to support humanity's rise, using their underground networks to spread truth and aid where official channels failed. Reyes and her team worked tirelessly to coordinate their growing forces, building a coalition not based on fear, but on shared hope and the promise of a new beginning. As alliances formed and old beliefs crumbled, the stage was set for a confrontation that would challenge not just who ruled the stars, but what it meant to be a part of the galaxy's future. Commander Vrak, standing on the edge of this shifting world, realized that the war was no longer just between fleets and weapons. It was a battle for trust, understanding, and the very soul of civilization itself. In the shadows where outcasts and renegades whispered their plans, and on the brightly lit decks of human ships, the spark of change was alive, ready to ignite a new era that no one could ignore or deny. The final battle unfolded near the heart of a vital star system where the shimmering orbits of gas giants and rocky moons bore silent witness to the fierce conflict about to decide the fate of the galaxy. The Council of Gen's forces, confident in their overwhelming numbers and long-established dominance, converged on the human fleet and their allies with swift precision. But the humans, led by Captain Elena Reyes, were not the legends the galaxy had imagined, fragile myths easily forgotten. They were a force born from hardship, hardened by centuries of survival, and fueled by an unbreakable will. Reyes's fleet moved with a combination of strategy and adaptability that the Council's commanders found difficult to counter. Their ships shifted formation like living beings, responding instantly to threats and opportunities alike. The Shadow Collectives, mercenaries, and smugglers flanked the human vessels, striking at the Council's supply lines and communication networks, turning the battlefield into a web of chaos and confusion for the enemy. The battle raged with bursts of brilliant energy and the roar of powerful engines, but it was the humans' relentless ingenuity that ultimately turned the tide. They deployed drones that hacked into enemy systems, disabling weapons and creating openings. Their fighters used unexpected attack angles, slipping through gaps in the enemy's defenses where the Council's fleets believed none existed. Each move was a testament to a species that had learned to thrive by thinking differently and never giving up. As the battle wore on, the Council's forces found themselves on the defensive, their confidence shaken by the humans' unexpected strength and unity. The illusion that humanity was a forgotten myth shattered like glass under the pressure of reality. The Council fleet in retreat, Captain Reyes sent a clear message across the communication channels, not a demand for surrender, but an offer for peace and partnership. The galaxy listened, hesitant but hopeful, as peace talks began on new terms. Representatives from many species gathered in neutral space, where old grievances were aired and new agreements forged. It was a moment of reckoning, a time when centuries of prejudice and misunderstanding had to be set aside for the chance of a better future. The humans, once dismissed as myths, now stood as equals united in purpose, fierce in their convictions and ready to claim their rightful place among the stars. Captain Reyes, standing on the bridge of the Valiant Dawn, gazed out at the vastness of space with a mixture of relief and determination. She knew this was not the end, but the beginning of humanity's true journey to rebuild, to explore, and to create a future where no species would be forgotten or underestimated again. The dawn of this new era was bright, filled with promise and the hard-won respect of allies and former enemies alike. And as the stars twinkled beyond the ship's viewports, Reyes felt the weight of responsibility settle on her shoulders. The galaxy was watching, and humanity had proven it was ready. The final confrontation unfolded in the depths of a critical star system, where the swirling clouds of ionized gases and the gravitational pull of giant planets formed a breathtaking but deadly battlefield. This star system was a vital crossroads for trade routes and communications control over it meant control over influence and power in much of the galaxy. The Council of Zune, confident in their decades of dominance and vast resources, dispatched their greatest fleet to crush the human resurgence once and for all. Their warships gleamed with polished hulls and advanced weaponry, and their commanders operated with practiced precision, ready to erase what they still considered a fading myth. Yet standing against them was a force unlike any they had faced before, a human fleet, led by Captain Elena Reyes. Joined by the Shadow Collectives, mercenaries, and outcasts, united by a cause greater than any one species, the battle began. With the cold silence of space shattered by the roar of engines and bursts of energy weapons, the Council's ships moved to encircle the humans, aiming to overwhelm with sheer firepower. However, Reyes and her commanders had anticipated this and arranged their fleet into a flexible, shifting formation that seemed to flow and change like a living organism. Small, nimble fighter craft darted between larger capital ships, disrupting enemy formations and attacking weak points with pinpoint accuracy. The human forces used every advantage their ingenuity could provide, deploying automated drones that slipped silently through the chaos to hack enemy weapon systems, disabling turrets and scrambling communications. These drones were a perfect example of human adaptability, created from salvaged parts and programmed to learn quickly from each encounter. Meanwhile, the Shadow Collective's warriors exploited the confusion, launching hit-and-run attacks on supply lines and communication hubs. Their guerrilla tactics were brutal and effective, striking the Council's fleet where it was most vulnerable and vanishing before retaliation could be organized. This chaos confused and slowed the Council's advance, eroding the confidence of their commanders. Captain Reyes watched the battle unfold with a steady gaze, issuing commands that reflected not just strategy, but also the resilience and spirit of humanity. Every maneuver was a reminder that humans survived because they could adapt, innovate, and work together against impossible odds. The Zune fleet, accustomed to swift and decisive victories, found themselves pushed back by this unexpected ferocity and coordination. The battle dragged on, with explosions lighting the void like distant stars, but the humans did not falter. They fought not only for survival, but for recognition and respect that had been denied to their kind for centuries. As the Council's flagship was forced to retreat under heavy assault, the tide had clearly turned. The myth of human weakness was obliterated, replaced by the undeniable reality of their strength. Captain Reyes seized the moment to broadcast a message across the battlefield and beyond, her voice firm but hopeful. She called for peace talks, not as a sign of surrender, but as an invitation to build a future where all species could coexist with mutual respect and understanding. Her words echoed through communication networks, reaching ears both eager and reluctant, sparking conversations that had been impossible in the past. The Council of Zune, faced with undeniable proof that humans were no longer a forgotten legend, but a rising power, reluctantly agreed to talks. Delegates gathered in a neutral star system, far from the battleground, where ancient space stations stood as silent witnesses to history in the making. These negotiations were tense and difficult. Centuries of mistrust, fear, and political gamesmanship surfaced in every discussion. Yet, the determination of Captain Reyes and the support of her allies, including voices from the Shadow Collective who had long sought change, pushed the talks forward. Slowly but surely, agreements began to form, agreements that recognized humanity's right to exist, expand, and contribute to the galaxy's future. The Council was forced to acknowledge that the old ways of dominance and dismissal were no longer sustainable. The galaxy had changed, and with it, the balance of power shifted toward cooperation and respect. Captain Reyes, standing on the bridge of her flagship as stars drifted past, felt a deep sense of accomplishment, but also the heavy weight of responsibility. This victory was only the beginning. The journey ahead would require diplomacy, rebuilding trust, and continuing to prove that humanity's place in the galaxy was earned not by war alone, but by contributions to science, culture, and unity. The dawn of this new era was both bright and fragile. Across the galaxy, species once divided by fear now looked toward a future shaped by shared hopes and a recognition that survival depended on working together rather than tearing each other apart. The humans' fierce spirit had shattered myths, but it was their resilience and willingness to forge new paths that would define the years to come. As Captain Reyes gazed out into the vast expanse, she knew the story of humanity was far from over. This was a new chapter, one where humans would not only survive, but thrive, explore, and inspire. The stars, once silent witnesses to their near extinction, now shone as beacons of promise and possibility. And somewhere deep in the endless black, new legends were already beginning to form, whispered not as myths, but as truths of a species, reborn and ready to claim its rightful place among the cosmos.